I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Industrial Community Development Subcommittee. And I'd like to acknowledge the members of the committee, Councilor Sharris, Councilor McGinn, Councilor Melville, Councilor Rosignol, and myself, Councilor Gould, as chair. And also in attendance, I believe, Mr. President, do we have the entire body this evening?
I believe Councilor Mitsoulas is absent right now, but I'm not sure if I can't see him on Zoom, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to call to order the meeting. As you well know, we've worked this through and through and trying to come up with a good package that we can submit to the state. And first, I'd like to acknowledge the hard work by Community Development Director Kurt Bellavance and Assistant Community Development Director Stacy Burnson. Thank you very much, Kurt and Stacy. You have done yeoman's work, and we greatly appreciate it. It's been back and forth 3 or 4 times, and I think we have a final product this evening that will be satisfactory to the entire council, and will put the city of Peabody in good shape housing production-wise. If I could, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Bellavance, who has been steering this ship. Kurt, anything you'd like to say, please?
I'm not sure if I know the mayor was going to speak at some point, so I'm not sure if he wanted to speak first.
Sure. Let's actually acknowledge that. Is the mayor available, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Gould, and thank you, Mr. Bellavance. I just want to say a few words before we turn it over to you, Kurt and Stacy. Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm very happy to be here. I thought the meeting we had a couple weeks ago was very productive. A lot of important items were discussed that I knew we needed to make a decision on. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts and efforts at that time. We're here today, hopefully, for a vote on the housing production plan. I think, as we talked a couple weeks ago, this is an important step for us. One, it qualifies us for grant money, which we've been very successful in getting. Our community development team has done a terrific job on that end. And I also think it puts us in a good position in terms of reaching our 10% and potentially achieving safe harbor for periods of time. So I do think this is an important document, and I think the discussion we had 2 weeks ago really allowed us to focus in on what all of you were thinking and kind of match that with what we were thinking. And I think we have a document that hopefully will be ready for some further discussion and maybe even a vote tonight. I did want to share, and I wanted to credit Kurt and Stacy. We've been really trying to work on these numbers so that everybody has a clear picture of where we're at in terms of our affordable housing numbers. So as of now, this is where we think we're at. We have 22,135 total housing units in the city. Under the subsidized housing inventory, currently we have 2,104. That's a 9.51%. And we just completed this, so before the conclusion of the meeting, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of this. I meant to do that, but we just actually finished this a short time ago. But that's at 9.51%. We have 16 units that are requested, that we've requested through the state, that we expect to be approved for. 5 from Terrace Estates, 9 from 59 Walnut, and 2 rehab homes that we have put forward that we've put forward as a request. That would bring us to 2,120, 9.58%. 2 that are in process that I think are very likely to move forward. One is 2 units at 160 Main Street and 116 units at Farm Ave, the residences at Farm Ave. That would put us at 2,238. It would put us at 10.11%. Obviously good news. That is in front of the Farm Ave one, is in front of the ZBA, and I believe they closed the public hearing and may be voting on that one in their March meeting. Not 100% sure on that, but that's where it stands. But that would put us at 10.11%. We also have the other ones I think all of us are pretty familiar with that are in various stages of different committees. 190 Rear Newberry, King Street, Oak Street, 7 Dearborn. Those are all in different committees and are pending at this time. So that could change certainly and will change, I think, when the census comes. We do not know when that's going to be released. We expect it within the next year. Could be a little longer. Everything's got pushed back because of COVID, certainly, but we just don't know when that's going to fall. So right now, though, if those two were to be included, we would be over 10%. And again, having a housing production plan, I think, would also just solidify some things for us. So Kurt and Stacy are going to go through some of the changes that we made based on the discussion we had at the last meeting. There were a number of items that Councilor McGinn brought forward that were right on, that have been changed. I know Councilor Rossignol brought up FALAs. We had a discussion on that. We removed that. I certainly think what we have now for FALAs is working for us, and I agree not moving forward with that is the way to go. So we removed that provision. The other provision was the bio provision that I think Councilor Turco brought up. That was something we withdrew or took out as well. That's something that I fear would have caused some further problems, but we didn't want to remove it without hearing and getting some discussion on that. So based on those and some other factors that were brought up, we really tried to condense it and take in all the comments and suggestions and concerns that were expressed at the last meeting. So we're here tonight. I'm here just to answer any questions and to try to help. But I know Kurt Bellavance and Stacy Burnson and their team have done a great deal of work on this. So Chairman Gould, if it's okay, we can turn it back to Kurt and Stacy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and great work by your team. Thank you. Kurt Bellavance, please.
Good evening, Kurt Bellavance, Community Development Director. I just want to reiterate what the mayor had just stated. We did meet 2 weeks ago. There were several comments and some things that the City Council asked us to look at. I think what the mayor reported was that we did make those changes, that those were requested. The removal of the changing the FALA program, removing out the cash buyout. Those, I know those are the top of the list. There were a lot of the numbers that we want to check and recheck because the subsidized housing list is always, it's a flowing document through the state. There's always certain levels of numbers that we have. We did send some numbers back to the state a couple times in 2020. So we did have some that were approved, some that we sent back again with some additional information. So as the mayor pointed out, you know, for example, the Sonic project was approved and on that list, and then a couple of the other ones, the Terrace Estate and the Walnut Street project that the City Council had approved. Those we wanted to send additional information to the state. So those we're waiting to hear back, but we're pretty confident that those are going to be accepted onto the subsidized housing list. So once you change one number within the document, you have to make sure you go through and make sure that all the other all the other numbers line up with that. Some of the other items listed in the document were just clarifying what definitions of certain subsidized housing groups were. We did that. We did incorporate many of Councilor McGinn's recommendations in regards to that. So we're here this evening to answer any questions in regards to those. I think we addressed all of what the council had brought up at their last meeting and incorporated those into this revised document. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bellavance. Stacy, would you like to speak? You've put a lot of hard work into it. We should acknowledge your effort.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Stacy Burnson, Assistant Director of Community Development. I think Kurt summed it up perfectly, so I'm going to leave it right with that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any members of the committee would like to speak, please?
Councilor Gould, Councilor McGinn has his hand up.
Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've kind of recapped the mayor and the director of community development have kind of recapped well, I think. From my perspective, the substantive edits that were discussed at the last Industrial Community Development meeting have been incorporated into the draft that's before us. There's also been a number of clarifying and administrative edits, which Mr. Bellavance alluded to at the last meeting, which were also incorporated. So I just want to verify that from a city council perspective, or state that I can verify that from a city council perspective. So regarding the majority of the plan, I don't have any additional inputs. I do have a couple of questions about the SHI, and as Mr. Bellavance says, I totally understand that it's a dynamic picture, but I just like to ask for clarification on a couple of things. The first one is the report states that the inclusionary zoning ordinance was adopted in 2002. And that left me scratching my head a little bit, because there were a number of projects that happened in the 2005 timeframe that were pretty large in scale, 8 Walnut Street and 84 Aborn Street. And I was not able to see anywhere units for those two large developments. And, you know, there were a couple others. I kind of stopped there because I saw some indication that maybe the inclusionary zoning wasn't passed until actually 2008, so if these two happen about the 2005 timeframe, then that would make sense that they wouldn't have been subject to the ordinance. But if 2002 is correct, then they would have been, and then the question would be, why no units, or did we take a buyout? Because the buyout provision wasn't eliminated until 2013, I think. So my request is you know, again, none of these comments tonight are intended to hold this up in any way, because to some extent the production plan and the dynamic of the dynamic nature of the housing inventory can be two independent things. But I would like to make sure that we get that inventory as totally accurate as we can. I'm going to stop there. I have a few other questions, but just with respect to the timing of when that passed, Mr. Bellavance, do you know off the top of your head can you verify that? I know there's well ahead of your time as director, but I don't know if you are able to verify that at your fingertips.
Before we do that, please, Councilor McGinn, can you make a motion to accept Communication 8F, please, the housing production plan?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
You heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. Roll call vote, please.
Councilor Charis. McGinn. Sorry.
Clarification, this is a motion to receive, not accept, correct?
Correct. I'm sorry. Motion to receive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, yes.
Rossignol.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Mr. Bellavance, please.
Again, good evening. I'm going to actually defer that to Stacy. I know she had worked here, so she would have a better recollection than I did in regards to the transition of creating and adopting that ordinance.
Ms. Bernstein, please.
Sorry, this was actually before me. I believe that it was passed in 2003, and I will have to confirm that because I apologize for not catching that. I have copies of all the old things, but nothing says when it was actually adopted. So I was trying to confirm that while you were all talking, but I do believe that it was 2003. But I will keep looking to see if I can actually confirm that.
Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So through you, I mean, the request I would have is if we can make sure that we know that date definitively, and that we can look at those couple of developments that I'm referring to, which I think happened in 2005, and if there are units for those developments on the SHI, I can't find them. I've looked on the summarized list in the housing production plan. I've also looked at the state's list, and I was not able to identify units. So, I mean, if that 8 Walnut Street's a condo project, that's a home ownership, that'd be another 8 units. Again, unless maybe the city accepted a buyout, that would explain it. So if we could check those, that would be appreciated.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I'm sorry. 8 Walnut Street is Upton Manor. So that's how it's listed on the subsidized housing inventory. And I apologize, I didn't catch the other one you were talking about.
I'm not sure is that Upton Manor, or is Upton Manor further up Walnut Street?
I'm sorry, 8 Walnut Street, 8 Walnut Street, yes, it was included. I don't remember how many units there were in that one. Those were listed on the inventory. I apologize. Sorry, I got the wrong one. So what was the other one that you said? I'm sorry.
So Upton, so that's 4 units for a 50-unit development?
For Upton?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. The other development I was asking about is 84 Aborn Street.
Those were listed. They were part of the inventory. Actually, the owners came before the city council, and I can't remember the year. They came before the city council. They argued that because of the restrictions on their properties, they were unable to sell them. And because of that, the city council actually released them from their affordability restrictions.
Okay, so there's a logical explanation for that. Thank you, Ms. Bernson. I'm skipping ahead to page 52, which is where we listed a number of, there's kind of a section here, bullets above where table 333 begins. And the second bullet is 80 Walnut Street, 3 or 4, where are those 3 for 80 Walnut Street? Where are those listed in table 333?
That is the one that's Upton Manor. Because I looked this up the other day.
So Upton Manor can't be both. It can't be both 8 Walnut and 80 Walnut.
No, it's correct. I corrected myself. It is not 8 Walnut Street. It is 80.
Okay, I want you to double check that, because the development that I'm talking about at 8 was the big prefab that's diagonally across from, that's 80?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. So
80 Walnut Street is Upton Manor. That's how it's listed on the inventory. 8 Walnut is a separate project.
Okay, and 8 was the one I was originally asking about. You told me that was Upton Manor, so that can't be the explanation for both 8 and 80.
Councilor,
No,
and if I may, Ms. Bernson corrected herself to us and said it's not 8, it is 80. She did. Maybe you just didn't catch it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize if I didn't catch that. So what do we know what the situation is for 8 then?
Yes. 8 Walnut Street, when those units were done and marketed, they actually were not done properly. And we had an agreement with the state as the units came up for sale that we would do the marketing and sell them according to the rules and regulations of the LIP program, the local initiative program. And unfortunately, we just have not, we weren't able to find eligible buyers for some of them, but that is, the restrictions were not valid, so they did not count on the inventory.
So is that past the point of no return? I mean, that's a 50-unit, approximately 50-unit development that was passed, that was post-inclusionary zoning and we get 0 credit?
We had credit for a little while. And then as the units have been sold off, they either didn't find an eligible buyer. But as far as the state released them. We've held the restrictions on them. So we still have restrictions on these properties. It's just as far as the state is concerned, they do not count on the inventory.
Okay, I hear the explanation. I'm not sure I fully grasp it, but so a deed restriction exists, but the state won't count it. Is that it still technically exists, the deed restriction?
That is correct. The deed restrictions, when the developer put the deed restrictions on the property, and when the restrictions were put on the property, it was not done with the consent of the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is the state agency that actually authorizes them. So when it was discovered, we actually worked with them to come up with, they released their portion of it because they never agreed to have these restrictions on. So the units still have a restriction on them. So if they go to sell them, we have to go forward and we try to get the units marketed according to the guidelines to make sure that they get added to the inventory. It just hasn't happened.
So I think I understand now. So the only way that those can come back into play is if they are sold. That is correct. That's the only event that could drive these things back onto the inventory, and it has to be those specific units.
Correct.
Thank you for taking me through that. So now on that same list of bullets, third from the bottom, the 1 Main Street, 3 units, where are those on the list? Where are those in table 3-33?
Yeah, I apologize because I actually did put those in the wrong section, so we were going to move them. So I'm sorry, because Kurt was kind enough to actually try to redo those edits to get it to council in time for Friday. So that was one that was missed. It just has to be moved down to the next section that it's pending. They have been we do have to get some paperwork together to give to the state. So we're just waiting for some further clarification to get those added.
Thank you. So that pending number will jump by 3, so that's actually good news, right? Then the next one, the six homeowner rehabilitation funded by critical care program. Are those a subset of the 86 HOR on the list?
Correct.
And then the 2 rental units at 10 Elm Street. Where are those in the SHI? I mean, I see Citizens for Adequate Housing, Central Street, 2 units. Should Central Street be Elm Street? Is that what that is?
No, Central Street is a separate project. Okay. Elm Street is actually, the units were actually funded through the housing rehab program. So they're actually counted as housing rehab units.
So if that's the case, what are the deed restrictions on those? Because there was CPC money on those as well. So if those are in the housing rehab program, why wouldn't they be something on here that lists perpetuity or something further out than 2045?
Well, it does, it's just how they're funded and how they're submitted for inclusion onto our inventory. That really doesn't have anything to do with the affordability restrictions or how long the restrictions are. It just happened to be that when we did those units, we actually funded them. I know it was CPC money, and I believe that there was a 30-year restriction on those, but I would have to look it up to find out exactly, to be 100% certain. But I do believe we put a 30-year restriction on those when we did them.
Okay, so those would be a subset of the 36, the rental, no, that wouldn't be, that would be, where would those fall? And there's 3 HOR line items. Which of those would the two be a subset of?
It would be the rental, the rental program, I believe. Yeah, because they were done as rental units, so that it would be included in as part of the total rental unit.
Okay, thank you. So from the, I'm in the table now, table 3-33, and that second line item for the PBDHOR program, it's 86 units. When we saw this, the last version of this, it was 90 units. So were there 4 units that fell off in the most recent state listing? Or what, is that the explanation for the drop of 4 there?
That is correct. There were 4 units that came off between the inventory we received in August and then the one we received in November. The affordability expired.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brinson. So I'm not going to comment about the group homes. I just know that I think Councilor Rossignol, because of the line of work he's in, has some firsthand knowledge of this stuff, and I'm going to defer to him on this. I know that you've explained to me in the past, Ms. Brinson, that not every group home qualifies for listing, so that's not lost on me. But it does seem like this is something we might want to probe a little bit further, and I guess we're stuck to some extent for confidentiality reasons, or I assume. I see Mr. Bellavance nodding, so I guess that is correct assumption in terms of, I guess, are our hands totally tied in terms of validating the state's numbers? I guess that's my question.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. I've tried that a few different times in the past to get clarification from the state in regards to that, and have been unsuccessful and nearly basically chastised for it's none of my business. So it's very, I mean, we can certainly try again to see if, and try to make sure that the numbers are accurate, but I doubt that they will, that they'll change.
It seems very odd that they would consider that none of our business, given that there are so many of them in PBD, and that it's such an important element of this listing. But I certainly believe that that's what you were told, and it may be worth taking another run at it. I had asked at the last meeting about 3 Main Street. Those are the 10 units that are above La Siesta. Where are those on the SHI?
We actually added those. They are listed under the homeowner rehab, which is the HOR. It was just the way that they were installed. We actually provided some funding, so that's how they were included.
So those would be a subset of the 36 with a 30-year restriction, is that?
Yes. Actually, I do believe the council, because I believe that they received a special permit, I do believe those are perpetuity.
Okay, so if those are perpetuity, then this table is just, where it has a range of dates, so if that 36 units, it says 2024 to 2045, there are some in there that are actually longer than that, is what you're saying.
Correct.
And what about 116 Main Street? That was another one I had asked about at the last meeting. That's a 10-unit.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that property.
Yeah, and I had mentioned at the last meeting that there were existing units there, and there were additional units added and on the first floor and in the basement of that. It was before I got on the council, but I think it brought the total unit count up to 10, and I don't know if that triggered inclusionary zoning or not. I don't know if. So I suspect it may not have because some were pre-existing, but I'm just not sure, and I thought it was worth asking the question. We don't need to get stuck on that. My request would be, as it was at the last meeting, to please take a look at it.
Because I wanted to look at the property. That was one of the Norman Lee property next to Sugar Cane.
That's correct, yep.
There were 3 units there were 2 or 3. They actually were funded through the housing rehab program as well. It was not subject to inclusionary zoning to the best of my recollection. But we did fund a couple of the units through the housing rehab program, so that would be added. It would be included with the HOR units.
Okay, great. So we are getting some credit there. And then we've got, just I guess as far as the, for the sake of completeness here in the pending section, we've got 85, 87 Lowell Street, 9 units have been permitted there, right, that's the former Red Cross building. So that will be subject to inclusionary zoning, correct?
Correct.
So since we know of that, should we include that in the pending list here?
You can, yes.
Okay, so with those couple of adjustments that we agreed to, there'd be a little bit of a ripple effect in some of the subsequent numbers in the report, but I mean, I would consider that administrative at this point and not anything that I would consider suggesting we hold things up for on this, but I would request that those that we know that can be corrected, that are corrected in the final version of this report that goes to the state. Thank you, Mr. Bellavance. Thank you, Ms. Burnson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman McGinn. I have to tell you, Councilman McGinn, it's you do important work. You don't mind getting in the trenches and really digging at it, but it's greatly appreciated, the effort you put into reviewing that. Thank you, Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other councilors on the committee that would like to speak?
Councilor Good, I see hands up for Councilor Rossignol and Councilor Charest at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Rossignol, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Bellavance. If you could just, and Councilor McGinn touched on this briefly, if you could just go back and just re-verify the number of units from the group homes through the state. I think And I know the number has changed from last meeting to this one. So just to get a true clarification before this is submitted, most of my other questions were asked and answered. The only other question I have is on page 1, the executive summary, the number of affordable units, the gap that you have as 110, is that number still accurate? Is that the most recent number after all of the calculations that you've done?
That is the official number. As the mayor pointed out, we do have some pending, but we can't count those, so we're sticking with the 110 as the number.
And then my last question, before I yield, the Sonic property, that is incorporated into this document as well, correct?
Yes, that is, that's on the subsidized housing list. It is counting.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Rosendahl. Councilor Sharris, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my only question right now was that 110. So earlier, the number was, last 2 weeks ago, was in the 80s, 80-something. And then tonight, I thought it was 90-something. So I'm missing something. So how is it 110 now?
Okay, as I've mentioned a few times, this list is always changing. So we submit numbers, they get back to us, we submit additional, they may change, take things off the list, we may want them to add things on the list. So the number, so we had 2 submissions from the state in 2020. And so originally we were working off the August list that they had provided, and we had sent some requests in to change that list. We did get a new list in November, so we had that, but they didn't include everything. So we did have some other ones that we had to verify again and add additional information. So that number, it's constantly changing. So as the mayor touched on earlier, the official number as we're looking at right now is 110 units. That does not include the 16 units that are pending, that we're waiting for verification in regards to that. And then that also doesn't include the additional potential 118 units that are pending. So the number officially with the state as of today is 110. It could change within the next week if they get back to us and verify our additional ones, and that would drop it to 94. So that's why we're always, that number's constantly changing.
Okay, thank you. So 110, it won't go higher. It's not going to go higher.
We don't suspect it to go higher now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sharris. Any other members of the committee first? Councilor Melville, would you like to weigh in, or are you all set?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank every councilor that put time into this, especially Councilor McGinn. He's done quite a bit on it, and I plan on supporting this. I think that's got a great benefit to the community, and I think it goes a long way into allowing us to make the decisions on the developments within our city instead of being forced to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Melville. Would any members of the council as a whole like to speak?
Excuse me, Councilor Gould. Councilor Turco has his hand up.
Councilor Turco, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of time, I'll probably make, in the fact that I'm not on this committee, I'll probably make 2 motions when we go to full council. But while we had the mayor here, because I'm doubtful you'll be here in an hour, right? I wanted to see if we could address, and I'll do this in the form of a motion, the yearly numbers of unit creation. I'm still kind of surprised that we don't have those yearly numbers. But my fear is that when the census comes out next year, the state or the federal government's going to hand us a number of how many units we have, and then we're going to be scrambling to verify those numbers. So my motion will be an open session to ask the building commissioner to provide us with the number of units created from 2011 to 2021, in a yearly format. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, Mayor. And then the second motion that I plan on making was to ask the building commissioner to provide the number of units created from 2011 in perpetuity to the council on a 6-month basis, so that we ourselves know where we are on the housing inventory. And I wanted, Kurt and yourself to know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Any other members of the council like to speak?
Chairman Gould, it looks like Councilor Walton has his hand up, and also Councilor McGinn.
Thank you. Councilor Welton, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. Through you to Mr. Bellavance, I was just hoping you might be able to give us an update. I know at the last meeting we spoke a little bit about revisiting the rehab program and reinvesting in that. Could you maybe just touch upon that briefly, please?
Yes, certainly. As the mayor was at the meeting, and I've had a couple conversations with him in regards to that. I know the budget meetings are coming up as we prepare our budgets, and we're definitely going to take a look at that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No other questions.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through you to Mr. Bellavance. So in your answer to Councilor Charis, there you talked about the 16 that are pending. So the 16 that are pending are now 19, right? Because we're moving the one main units down to that list. Who's confirmed?
Correct.
Right. I mean, it's important that we get these numbers. It's just as soon, we just got this handout tonight, and just want people to have the right numbers. And also with respect to this handout, 7 Dearborn is listed as 180 units, and on page 54, 7 Dearborn is listed as 150 units. So that would change the 3 that are there to 7, right? So that's another.
Yep.
Is that, everybody agrees with that? Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so again, all those in the category of clarifications needed before this thing is, before the final version is sent to the state. Mr. Chairman, I'd be ready to make a motion if there's no other councilors.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Mr. Bellavance, before we take a vote, would you like to make a final comment, or you're gonna take the data that on the numbers and input it as it changes, correct?
Absolutely, correct.
Yes, Councilor McGinn, please go forward with your motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, before I do that, the mayor handed out the list that he was alluding to there earlier, so I would move to receive the late communication from his honorable mayor.
You heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. Roll call vote, please.
Councilors Charis?
Yes.
McGinn?
Yes.
Rozignol?
Yes.
Melville?
Yes.
Gould?
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move that
Councilor McGinn, excuse
Yes.
me, I'm sorry. I just want to say this has been quite an experience. We've been at it for 3 or 4 months, and I appreciate everybody's diligence and perseverance in getting this done, because it's an important document for the city, and we're going to move forward on it finally. Sorry for the interruption. Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve the City of Peabody, Massachusetts Housing Production Plan, updated February 2021, subject to the additional administrative edits discussed at this meeting of the Industrial and Community Development Subcommittee. So moved.
You heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. Any comments? There being none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors Charis,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Folks, thank you so much for your help, Stacy and Kurt. I appreciate your diligence. Mr. Mayor, thank you for putting a team together that got it done. And if there is no further comments by councilors, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
You heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. Roll call vote, please.
Councilors Charis,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We are adjourned.